Alright, what's going on, guys, and welcome back. So today we're going to be checking out a video called Why BDSP Failed as a Remake. Now, the reason I actually wanted to check this out is because oftentimes you guys will ask why I consider Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl to be the worst Pokemon games in the series, and I don't say that as like a hater of modern Pokemon or anything like that. I genuinely think these are some of the worst games. Especially as remakes, and I think that this video does a good job of discussing why that is without being like emotional about it or anything like that. So we're going to be checking this out. It is by the Kings O'Rourke. You can check out their channel. I will leave it linked below. But yeah, it's a bit of an old video, but I think this is a pretty good one.
When Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were announced back in February of 2021, many Pokemon fans jumped for joy. Finally, the fourth generation, arguably one of the most influential entries in the Pokemon franchise, is getting the proper remake it deserves. But to many of our surprise, we were greeted with the opposite of what we envisioned for a Pokemon remake. Hello everyone, my name is King.
So, I think one thing that a lot of people didn't like about the Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl reveal was the chibi art style. I actually defended BDSP when this was a thing. I was like, you know what? If the game has good content and they decide to go with a more classic sort of chibi art style, I'm fine with it. Like, I can deal with that. It's not a big deal. I don't like how they zoom in on a lot of the scenes. It makes them look really goofy. I think they should have just kept the top-down view. But the chibi art style is actually one of the things that didn't really bother me about these games. Again, besides the zoomed-in angles like this.
Zork the Illusionist, and today we're going to be taking a look at what makes a good Pokemon remake and why Pokemon BDSP falls short. Categorizing what makes a good Pokemon game from a bad one is hard, since the definition of good is subjective.
Yeah.
For example, I can say Pokemon Black and White are the greatest Pokemon games ever created.
They're not, in my opinion. I feel like everybody has romanticized Gen 5. I don't think Gen 5's bad, but I think a lot of people forget that, like, the reason a lot of people didn't like Gen 5 was because, like, a lot of the Gen 5 Pokemon are hella mid. There's some cool ones, there's some trash ones, but there's tons of mid in there.
However, to someone who's been playing Pokemon since its inception, they would probably argue that Generation 1 is the best generation ever created.
So I've been playing Pokemon since its inception. I don't think Gen 1's the best.
Since this can be interpreted as a vague statement, I set aside 4 categories to judge these games on. New content, new features, performance, and improvements over the original games.
Yeah.
So now that we have a clear picture of what defines a good Pokemon game from a bad one.
Exactly, like that's what a remake should do. It shouldn't just be, especially a Pokemon remake, like when you have games like Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, even Fire Red, Leaf Green, all of these remakes took those games to the next level. If you ask me what's the best way to play Generation 1, I wouldn't say go play Red and Blue. I'd say play Fire Red and Leaf Green. I genuinely think those games are better than Let's Go because they actually have more content and there's the normal wild battles and stuff like that. But same with Gen 2. If you ask me what's the best way to play a Gen 2 game, or technically it's a Gen 4 game, but if you were to ask me how should I experience the Johto games, I'd say Heart Gold, Soul Silver, hands down. They're an improvement to Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, I'd even say, is a great way to experience Gen 3. I feel like that's when they started to cut back a little bit. There's no Battle Frontier like Emerald had or anything like that. But I'd say, you know what? Like, if you have ORAS, you're not missing out too much versus Emerald, other than the post game. The Delta episode's dope as hell. And there's a lot of good there. You still have Mega Evolution and all that stuff. They improved. Let's Go is where I feel like they stopped really trying to take the games to the next level, but that's just my opinion.
It's time that we time travel back to the year 2009. Celebi, would you like to do the honors?
Speed this up.
The year 2009, when Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver released, and little did we know, these 2 remakes would set the bar so high that almost every future Pokemon remake that followed would fall flat. The brand new slew of content and features added in these 2 remakes makes Pokemon BDSP look like an incomplete game.
It really does feel like, everyone says that they have Gen 1 nostalgia, and they're always trying to shove it in your face, which is kind of true, but I feel like Game Freak really did treat Gen 2 the best.
This holds true when we compare the new features and content added in both games. Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver added the ability for all 493 Pokemon to follow
that emulator
the
gameplay is
Pokeathlon
so
Dome,
nasty.
which contained 10 minigames. Team Rocket now has 4 new executives you can battle. The Johto Battle Frontier was added, the ability to capture almost every legendary from other Pokemon games, practically the entire storyline from Pokemon
routes.
Crystal, and the Pokewalker, just to name a few. While Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl added the Grand Underground.
That's not an addition in my opinion. The Grand Underground is the underground with wild spawns. Those wild spawns already existed in Platinum in the overworld, which I think is better. I feel like having to go to the underground to find Pokemon is like a little bit weird. Like if it's not like post-game stuff. And then the super contests.
Super contests, which I barely consider a new feature since it replaced the old Pokemon contest.
I would consider it like a genuine step down. Because old contests, if I recall, now it's been a while, but from Diamond and Pearl, the old contest had like the dress-up feature, and then I think there was like the appeal section or whatever. This is just one-string Guitar Hero.
Ramnus Park, the ability for Pokemon to follow you, which hardly works, and super limited...
Yeah, the following mechanic's really bad in this game.
Character customization.
I will say character customization is a plus, even if it is limited.
Despite all these new features being added in Pokemon BDSP, some features you would expect to see in the remakes were removed, like the Battle Frontier and Giratina story at Spirit Pillar. Now, before some of you may say, hey, King's Arc, these are supposed to be Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes, not a Platinum remake, therefore you shouldn't expect to see any of this content, I would actually agree with you.
Anybody that says that, I feel like, is really, like, mentally challenged in terms of reasoning, because, okay, the goal of the remakes is to improve upon that whole generation. Even if it is a Diamond and Pearl remake, it should take elements from Platinum, the definitive Gen 4 game, and integrate them into the Diamond and Pearl story. They tried to do that a little bit with like the origin room for Giratina and stuff like that. ORAS had the Delta episode, which was kind of like their Emerald content. Heart Gold and Soul Silver incorporated all the Suicune stuff from Crystal. These games should aim to be better than the definitive versions, not the same as the default, kind of unfinished versions, because Diamond and Pearl by themselves aren't great Pokemon games.
However, Ilka decided to cherry pick certain content from Pokemon Platinum. Don't believe me? Just wait till we get to the improvement section of this video to see exactly what I mean. Now that I've cleared that all up and we've seen all the features in both games, I'm left wondering, why is there such a sharp decline in the amount of content from previous Pokemon remakes? Well, a few things come to mind. The first being the developers of the game, Ilka. Ilka's short...
A lot of people like to throw Ilka under the bus. I'm not saying this person's doing that. You have to remember, Ilka was being the president of Ilka or whatever was co-producing it with Masuda. Masuda still said, yeah, this is good. So people gotta chill when they blame Ilka completely. Like, you had Masuda, who, apparently was an equal partner to an equal co-producer, which is bull. Like, if a new studio's coming in to make a Pokemon game, and the guy that's been there since the beginning is quote-unquote a co-producer on paper, that guy's taking charge. Like, come on. Like, if you don't think that's the case, if you think Masuda was, like, totally like, oh, yeah, man, you guys do whatever you want, we're equal, like you've never worked any sort of job with seniority. Because if someone comes to my job and tells me how to do my job, I'm going to tell them, no, this is how it's done. And it doesn't matter if you're technically equal.
I love computer art, lacks experience with developing.
Also, again, Ilka, like, they made Pokemon Home. Like, they're not exactly experienced developers.
A proper Pokemon title. What the only experience they have with the Pokemon games development prior to BDSP is Pokemon Home.
Yeah,
this can be one
exactly.
Possibility. Another could be the rush to put out a game by the
Hideaways were a cool idea, don't get me wrong. I just feel like, first of all, you have overworld Pokemon. Why not, like that, that's pretty cool. Why not just take all of that and put it up and use the Platinum spawns?
Season. When we consider the time BDSP was released, Nintendo just released a brand new Switch variant a couple of months earlier, so it only makes sense to put Pokemon to sell along with the new console.
Yeah, exactly. Let's rush out a game in order to, get money.
I believe Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl weren't meant to be a big remake like Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver were, had to do with Pokemon Sword and Shield, Game Freak's flagship Pokemon title. I mean, just think about it. When Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver released, they were supported with official Pokemon tournaments and even had compatibility with other 4th generation games, while Pokemon BDSP weren't compatible with any other games.
I feel like since Generation 8, things have gotten really weird with what Pokemon games are considered what generation. Like, people will say, well, BDSP are Gen 8 games, but, like, are they really? They don't contain any Sword and Shield Pokemon. Same with like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee or Gen 7 games. You know, they don't really feel like it. Like these games don't feel connected. They don't like for example, you know, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, they don't contain Z moves. The only Gen 7 Pokemon allegedly that they contain are the Meltan Pokemon, which are really like transitional, like Pokemon Go exclusive Pokemon. And then like with Gen 8, BDSP doesn't contain Dynamax, which I mean I'm fine with because Dynamax sucks, but doesn't contain Dynamax, doesn't contain any of the Swish Pokemon, Sword and Shield, and it just doesn't feel like it has no connections to Galar. Even Legends, like Legends is allegedly a Gen 8 game, but it doesn't really feel like it. You know what I mean? Like ever since the Let's Go games and now Gen 8, Gen 9. Maybe Gen 9, we'll have to see what the next Pokemon game is, but it just doesn't feel like the generations are as like concrete as they used to be. Like Heart Gold and Soul Silver were clearly Gen 4 games. Fire Red Leaf Green were clearly Gen 3 games. They use the same engine and everything. You know, Oras, clearly Gen 6 games.
On the Nintendo Switch. To back up my claim, let's take a look at Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. These remakes push the boundaries of the 3DS for the time, and just like Heart Gold and Soul Silver are packed with so much content and new features. Unlike Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, I suspect that BDSP most likely were filler games to hold fans over until the release of Pokemon Legends of Arceus.
Which is kind of gross if you think about that. Like if you were an OG Gen 4 fan or a Platinum fan, or even a Diamond and Pearl fan, you kind of got done dirty. Like you didn't get that like premium remake experience that other gens got. And now people are talking about how they want a Gen 5 remake, which I don't think is going to happen until Gen 10, but it's like after this, do you really want Gen 5 to be remade? Like you're better off just playing it on the DS.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about performance, since recent Pokemon games have been struggling in this department.
Okay, so I'm going to skip through performance a little bit. BDSP performs fine. There are bugs and glitches because the character doesn't snap onto a grid, and that's caused like soft locks and stuff. It also makes it hard to bike around and like mount Cornet. BDSP, the main advantage in terms of performance is just like the surfing speed, the HP bar moves faster, but at least with regards to movement speed in the overworld, that was fixed. A lot of it was fixed in Platinum. So I don't consider that enough of like a bonus. I don't want to go. I've seen like this video a few days ago before I decided to do a reaction. So I have seen the performance section. That's basically what he covered. So we're going to move on to here.
I don't think it would have been too much of a problem to include the content from Pokemon Platinum. And for those who would say it's impossible from a technical perspective, I've got news for you. Take a look at...
It's not impossible from a technical anyone who says that's stupid.
Pokemon Renegade Platinum. And no, I don't mean the ROM hack for the DS. I mean the remake they created from Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Pokemon Shining Pearl.
People have been like that's what actually my buddy Barry mentioned this. The one good thing about BDSP is that we finally got like a Unity based Pokemon game so people could hack the crap out of it and, you know, add the things we've wanted.
This ROM hack completely overhauled everything Pokemon BDSP has done, and even added highly requested features that everybody wanted, like all the events from Pokemon Platinum, new Pokemon from other generations, and there's even a mod from True to Size Pokemon.
That's dope.
How is it possible that a team of unofficial passionate developers are able to create a better 4th gen remake? Could it be Game Freak doesn't know what Pokemon fans
It's because they're passionate. That's what it is.
want? It is possible that they're out of touch.
Like, unfortunately, and like I'm sure there are people with passion at Game Freak, but their job is to develop the game. So if the higher ups are telling them, you know, screw your passion, put out this game to print money, that's what they're gonna do. It's just things have gotten to that point. I don't think that there's the same level of passion that there used to be in the Pokemon company, as unfortunate as it is. And again, this isn't like a Pokemon hate video. This is just like, I don't know how you could defend BDSP when it doesn't add anything. It just literally feels like a filler game. And it doesn't just feel like a filler game is one thing, but this is a filler game that essentially squandered any opportunity for an actual good Diamond and Pearl remake.
With the fan base, I personally believe so. Don't get me wrong, some of the decisions that Game Freak has made have been great. Take a look at Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Legends was
while
great.
Other decisions they made haven't been that great. Like at the whole Dexit fiasco.
Like, it wasn't a perfect game, but it was good.
Could it be Game Freak's just lazy and assumes that everything they create will sell millions regardless of the lack of content? It's hard to...
I think they do think that things will sell great regardless of content. I definitely do think that that's a mindset there.
But all I know is that I don't like the current decision of picking and choosing what we receive as far as content goes for Pokemon remakes. So now that we see all the shortcomings of the current Pokemon remakes, let's talk about the future ones and how they can make them better. We all know that Unova remakes are up next, and since the 5th generation games are my favorite, I want Game Freak or even Ilka, if they decide to take that route, to do it right.
Honestly, like, just give it to anyone that has experience making RPGs. Like, look how great Coliseum and XD were. They need to chill. All right, they need to be giving these games to, you know, more competent developers, in my opinion. Ilka doesn't seem like they're up to the task, whether it's because of time constraints on them or lack of experience. I'm not trying to blame them. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but BDSP were, again, the most unacceptable Pokemon games I've ever played.
Stardust, let's take a look at Oras. I think this is a great baseline for the future remakes since it's more akin
Yeah,
to...
again, like Oras, like, yes, it cut the battle frontier. Bad mistake, in my opinion. It made certain parts of the game a little bit easier. People complain about the EXP share. At least you could turn it off. They were great remakes. They added so much good shit.
What a typical Pokemon remake is. First, we need to establish the art style. I'm not saying that chibis were terrible, but the character design should correlate to whatever the current Pokemon games are. Oras, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver did this perfectly by having all the trainer models match up to the current art style of the latest generation.
Yeah, Fire Red Leaf
Character
Green
customization is something Game Freak needs to keep. There is nothing better than creating a character you feel like you can relate to. However, instead of having limited options, Game Freak should add as many customization options as possible and even add extra DLC outfits down the line. The current generation gimmick. This is a big one, since it helps out with the flow for competitive play. During the time Oras was created,
I
it had
honestly
Mega
think they should
Evolution,
get rid of
and this gimmick
gimmicks.
worked perfectly, since a big selling point of the Gen 3 remakes, we're seeing your favorite Generation 3 Pokemon receive a Mega Evolution. If the next remakes wants to captivate the competitive side of Pokemon, we need to have whatever the current generation gimmick at the time tie in with the old Pokemon from the generation the remakes are based on. New story elements. One of the biggest things that help Pokemon Oras stand out is the retelling of the Hoenn region.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that choosing the correct orbs would make the Hoenn region fall into shambles? And since Zekrom and Reshiram already have new forms that tie in with Kyurem, Game Freak can easily set up a story plot around these new forms.
Yes.
The Delta episode took everything a child growing up playing Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald and turned it on its head. Having that epic boss battle with Deoxys while riding on the back of Rayquaza going into space took every playground rumor about how to catch Deoxys and made it a reality. Game Freak can even capitalize on some of the brand new mythicals these games introduced, like Meloetta, Victini, Genesect, or even Keldeo, in some form of a bonus episode or a filter DLC. And speaking of DLC, Game Freak can pick anything from the 4 Generation 5 games and retell the story events. I feel like Pokemon BDSP could have had more content with the addition of story DLC. As of this
Okay, the only thing with BDSP and DLC is, like, I'm sick and tired of them selling DLC as if it's something new. Like, you can't just put a bunch of National Dex Pokemon in an area and then charge us for it and be like, yeah, look, new content, guys. Like, and then even with the SV DLC, like, they're trying to sell, like, easier ways to get Pokemon for VGC and stuff like that, like they did with Sword and Shield, and it's like, you guys, like, why can't you have a full game full of content and then add to it? Like, I'm not against DLC, but it should be something that's, like, extra. The DLC shouldn't be just bringing me back to what Pokemon used to be in terms of content.
Recording, we're currently awaiting the DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. To these games' credit, the story left us with a lot of unanswered questions. So imagine if Game Freak left us on a cliffhanger about N. And how
I mean, I feel like the big reason that we got so many unanswered questions in Scarlet and Violet is because, and you know, you guys might disagree with me, but the story wasn't fleshed out at all, like, very well. Like, there was a lot of repetitive cutscenes of the same thing. There was a lot that they could have done to flesh out the story that they didn't.
With Pokemon transformed him into a Zoroark, and the only way that we can help him is by teaming up with Chorus. Just a simple retelling of story can make a regular remake into something special. Now, let's talk about the legendaries and how adding new forms adds to the remake's experience. In Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, pretty much every legendary introduced in the original games received a new form. This added a lot of depth
I'm
to how
not
we view these
100%
legendary
for
Pokemon.
new forms.
For
A lot of the
example,
new
look at
forms lately
Latios.
have been kind of weird,
Finally,
so
we
we're going
have
to skip
post-game
this.
content. To praise Pokemon BDSP,
Post-game content,
the
let's
introduction
go.
of Romnus Park is brilliant. I love how we have the ability to capture...
I think the Romanus Park sucks. You should have an actual area for each of these legendaries instead of making a dumpster. That's my opinion. You guys can disagree.
Legendaries, but I dislike how we unlock the legendary Pokemon. By having to dig up this mysterious shards from the Grand Underground, it just seems boring. And don't even get me started on how we're just gifted a Mew and a Jirachi for playing Pokemon Let's Go and Pokemon Sword and Shield. The new remake should make you work for the legendaries like in Pokemon Heart Gold and Pokemon Soul Silver. For example, take a look at how you catch Rayquaza in Pokemon Heart Gold. You have to catch a Kyogre, trade for a Groudon, get the Jade Orb, and then catch Rayquaza at the Embedded Tower. Having to work for legendary Pokemon makes them seem more valuable versus them just being handed it to you. Gym Leader rematches and rival battles are fine, however, there should be an option for the levels to scale to level 100. Finally, Game
Yeah,
Freak
that'd be
should bring
cool.
back the Battle Frontier or some form of multi-battle facility area. In this area, each battle facility could focus on different battle formats, like triple, rotation, or double battles.
Yeah,
And even add
yeah.
Pokemon Showdown-like creator, so competitive Pokemon is accessible for everyone. Regardless of how you feel about the current state of Pokemon, I believe we can all agree that Pokemon BDSP is a remake that missed the mark, and these shortcomings show when we compare it to past Pokemon remakes. I believe my ideas of how to prevent the Generation 5 remakes from the same fate is good, but I know your ideas could be much better than mine. So leave them in the
So yeah, that's pretty much it for their video. Again, you can definitely check them out, linked below. The reason I thought that this was an interesting discussion topic, and I wanted to showcase this video specifically, is number one, this person doesn't have enough subscribers, so you should subscribe. I'll subscribe to them too. And number two, I oftentimes will get people in the comments who get like really offended that I say anything bad about BDSP. Like, oh, you don't like Gen 4? It's like, no, I actually really do like Gen 4. Like, Heart Gold, Soul Silver are my favorite Pokemon games. Platinum's one of my favorite Pokemon games. Again, I don't think Diamond and Pearl were very good, but at least the definitive edition was. So, like, the reason I don't like them as remakes is I feel like this is just a bad precedent for minimalistic remakes and just like lacking content in general in Pokemon games. I feel like because they wanted to do Legends Arceus, but they wanted to kind of have their cake and eat it too. They still wanted that like Christmas Pokemon game. They ended up bastardizing Sinnoh and, you know, throwing it off to a third-party company, probably not giving them enough time or resources. And then the friggin', you know, president of Game Freak was like, yeah, guys, this is great. Let's do it. And it's just, I don't know, man. This BDSP, I'm hoping is a mistake that never happens again. A lot of people hear me criticize Sword and Shield because it doesn't have, like, a lot of content. It's missing its own version of Silphco, branching roots, and all this other stuff. But, like, I'd rather play Sword and Shield 10 times in a row than have to play BDSP. Like, just BDSP, there's no reason to play it over Platinum, in my opinion, unless you just don't have a DS. And even then, I feel like you're getting a negatively warped sense of what Gen 4 was. Because, like, this person mentioned a lot, but they didn't even get into, like, how bad the level scaling is in BDSP, how the game, you steamroll the entire game right up to the Elite Four, and then it suddenly gets, like, hard. It's just all over the place. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think about BDSP. Do you think BDSP are great games for some reason, or do you agree with me and think that, you know, they're definitely games that missed the mark when it comes to remakes? But yeah, anyways, guys, if you want to stay up to date on all things monster taming, or just, you know, indulge in discussions about various monster taming games like Pokemon, definitely subscribe to the channel for daily videos. You can check out my Twitter, Discord, and Patreon linked below. And special thanks to our patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Dark Persona Exodus, and Candy Morency. And I'll see you next time. Peace.